Testing, testing, testing. 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 Wait. Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing. Wait. Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing. Wait. Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing. All right, so let's go ahead and get started again. I apologize, guys. All right, so let's go ahead and get started again. I apologize, guys. Okay, let's see if that works a little bit better. I don't know what Streamlabs was doing there, but let's hope we're back and ready to go now. I'm sure it is. So here's what happened. Somehow Streamlabs added another microphone, so it was recording and recording the input twice. So now all of a sudden it should be better because there's not two audio inputs. I don't know why it decided to add a second. I literally didn't touch my stream except for changing the theme a little bit, but now we should be good. I apologize if it sounded bad before. It was throwing me off. I just really wanted to make sure. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Just really wanted to make sure that we were good to go. So again, I apologize for that, guys, and it kept getting me off track, and I wanted to make sure that I was focused and knew what I was talking about without having to worry about the audio so much. There we go. So we should be good. We should be good. Sorry, I apologize. And also, Doc, I appreciate the bit. I do appreciate the bit. So again, I was talking a little bit about why to become a moderator, dude. It's just people that are in streams a lot, people that I know are bringing out the best in the stream. They're shouting out people that I should be noticing. They're moderating chat. That's kind of their role, and I just pick people that I think would do a good job in that, because especially as the audience continues to grow and we continue to have hundreds and hundreds of people in chat, I want to make sure that it's well moderated. So it's just something that over time I decide certain people to be moderators. It's not necessarily one certain criteria. All right, we'll allow some people to filter back in. I apologize about the audio, guys. Okay, so going back to what I was talking about, Fred VanVleet is kind of another deal that went down that kind of didn't get talked about a ton because it was so crazy in the beginning, and then obviously Braun happened, and now today is kind of the first time that we can really take a deep breath and look at everything that happened as a whole. And Fred VanVleet was an extremely valuable piece to the Raptors, and at times even finished games either with Lowry and DeRozan or without them. And to get him for 2 years, 18, obviously he's looking to re-enter the market in 2 years and really take advantage of a new contract in 2 years, which is why he went for a bit of a shorter deal. But for the Raptors, that's a pretty good price. It definitely could have been a lot worse if other teams really got in the bidding early, and it seemed like Van Fleet was very motivated, very motivated to end up staying with the Raptors. Doc, apparently Streamlabs decided to add, or Streamlabs OBS decided to add another microphone in there, so it was recording the audio twice, which is why. And I appreciate the love for getting to 24K. Thank you guys. Appreciate that. So Van Fleet is another one. I don't know if we have any Raptors fans in chat, but Van Fleet is another one that we just definitely did not get a chance to talk about a ton. Bigfoot says, was it a smart move to fire Casey? Now, what I would say is I think it was a smart move for the Raptors to move on from Dwayne Casey, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's a bad coach. Obviously, coach of the year, and led them to what I believe is a franchise record in terms of wins. It just, in the postseason, it just doesn't seem to work, whether it's in-game adjustments or otherwise. It just doesn't seem like Dwayne Casey's style or whatever he has going with the Raptors works in the postseason. And so to move on from him, I don't think was a bad idea at all. And that's someone that is still going to be a good coach in this league, obviously. And I believe he's with the Pistons now and should do well there. But for them to move on and maybe have a different voice, and, you know, especially now that LeBron's gone, could kind of reinvigorate their chances of moving forward in the East. It's an interesting comparison, Bigfoot, comparing him to Andy Reid or Marvin Lewis. It's interesting. So moving on to some other guys that we haven't really gotten a chance to talk about. We talked about Mario Hezonja a little bit, actually, last night on stream, because it was misreported who he originally was going to be signing with. But Mario Hezonja is a Knick, and this is a rare move by the Knicks that I actually really like. This is kind of a high upside kind of move that could definitely pay dividends for the Knicks down the road and kind of allow them to capitalize on the potential that Hezonja has. Now, obviously, his first couple years in Orlando did not go great, and he definitely still had his ups and downs this past year, but he also showed a lot of potential, especially near the end of the year, and he's a guy that I don't mind the Knicks taking a swing at on a 1 year, $6.5 million kind of flyer deal. I think that's actually a pretty good move for them, and I was a little bit surprised that the market wasn't a little bit heavier for Hezonja. I definitely expected him to get more than a 1 year deal and definitely more than a $6.5 million contract. But maybe, again, it's just these guys wanting to get back into free agency as fast as possible. And so maybe he's going to go and try and prove himself for a year in New York and then move on from there. Yeah, I would imagine most Magic fans are going to end up being pretty sad that Hezonja's gone. I know that, Aaron Gordon was obviously a big guy that they wanted to bring back. But Magic fans, or at least the ones that I know have seen on Twitter, definitely wanted Hezonja back, and it's a bit of a loss for a team to lose the guy who was the 5th overall pick, and I believe the 2015 NBA draft. Enter, I appreciate the 2. He says, you've inspired me to actually start making videos. I appreciate that, man. I really appreciate the 2. Guys, again, donations are not expected, but they are much appreciated, and I'll always read your message as long as it is appropriate. And I obviously have been able to fix stream alerts. So again, I really appreciate it, Enter. Thank you. And best of luck to you, man. Best of luck to you making your videos moving forward. I hope it goes well for you. Doc, did you really go to a couple Magic games? Interesting. I know you're in Florida. Have you gone to any other games? And you gone to any Heat games or anything? Interesting. So moving on, we've got 2 Spurs guys to talk about. Rudy Gay and Marco Bellinelli. So obviously the big focus around the Spurs has been whether Kawhi is going to get traded. But as always, they're always moving to still try and improve their team and make sure they're going to give themselves a chance to win some games moving forward. And with Rudy Gay and Marco Bellinelli, it's not necessarily going to be game-changing, but to bring those guys in to provide some depth are definitely good moves. Rudy Gay is a 1 year, $10 million deal, which I actually didn't see reported much when it happened. I know guys mentioned it in chat, but I didn't really get a chance to see it a ton until I looked it up today. And then we've got Marco Bellinelli, 2 years, 12. Those are 2 good moves, very Spurs-like moves. Those guys will both play well in San Antonio. But those are just 2 moves that I kind of wanted to bring up because I don't know that it was really talked about a ton. Moving on, we're going to talk about a lot of Lakers stuff. Moving forward. They have an interesting scenario on their hands. So in my mind, just to kind of set everything up, when LeBron originally was considering going to LA, I was thinking that it was going to be, he was going to be the second piece and someone was going to go first, whether it be Boogie or Paul George or a Kawhi trade. There were plenty of reports that said Bron was not going to be the first one to jump on board, and that's what I thought was going to be the case. I thought that he was going to be the second guy. It turns out those reports are completely wrong, because everything that I read yesterday and saw yesterday, whether it was Windhorst or whoever, said that Bron apparently in meeting with the Lakers did not put any pressure on them to immediately surround him with an all-star caliber player. Now, obviously, he wants good players around him, but it seems like they might be slow playing this a little bit. Now, obviously, this could change daily as things have been with this Kawhi situation, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Lakers are doing a slow play in what would, in my opinion, would be the smart play in waiting until 2019 to sign Kawhi and keeping all of their young assets, which is why you're seeing all of these one-year deals. JaVale, Lance, KCP, obviously Bron's long-term, but they still have enough cap space to sign Kawhi to a max next year, assuming they sign everybody else this summer to one-year deals. They're certainly creating an interesting cast of characters with Lance and JaVale McGee, but I would not be surprised if they're waiting until 2019 to sign Kawhi. It's shocking to me, honestly, that given LeBron's past, I said last night on stream when he signed that there has to be someone else coming, right? Like there has to be someone else on the way. There's no way Bron went to LA as the only guy, but apparently that's not the case. Apparently he is okay waiting a little bit. I mean, it's not like their team is going to be bad. Bron's on the team. They're going to make the playoffs, probably going to win 50 games. So whether they, obviously he wants to keep the final streak alive, but I don't know that he's putting a ton of pressure on them right away, judging by the 4-year deal, judging by the reports coming out yesterday, that in his meetings with Magic Johnson, he didn't put pressure on the team to immediately surround him with somebody, which is the exact opposite of some of the reports that we saw that said that he needs someone else there first. So what I want to know from you guys is, where do you think this Lakers team falls in the Western Conference? Obviously, we have the Rockets, we have the Warriors, Oklahoma City should be okay, Utah should be very good, San Antonio is always a player. Where do you see this Lakers team falling in the West? Where do you see them in terms of, you know, the hierarchy of the West? Are they a top 4 team? Are they an immediate championship contender? And I mean as currently constructed, assuming Kawhi is not coming this season, assuming it's Bron, the young guys, and some one-year deals that they put together, where do you see them? We've got a 4 seed, between a 4 and a 6, 5th or 6th. Okay, so we're right in that 4, 5, 6. A couple people may be a little bit higher than that, but for the most part, we've got 4, 5, 6. A couple people, like I said, are 2 or 3, or a couple people are saying 2 or 3. And I think that just kind of depends on where the Rockets go from here, because even as currently constructed, I would think that if the Rockets managed to bring back Clint Capella, then the Lakers are probably the 3rd or 4th best team in the West. And I'm only putting 3rd or 4th in there because Utah could be very good. You never know with San Antonio, depending on the Kawhi situation. And then obviously potentially Oklahoma City with another year to kind of grow with that group. So I would put them right now somewhere in that 3rd and 4th seed, but that's really irrelevant because they're going to have to, if they want to make the finals, they're going to have to go through Houston. They're going to have to go through Golden State, Utah, Oklahoma City, San Antonio, all of those teams. And in the postseason, I think they would have a good chance to do that. But in terms of regular season, as they're kind of going through what are more than likely going to be some growing pains, I would put them in right around that 2 to 3 seed spot. So yeah, we've got a lot of 3 seeds. That's true. The Nuggets won 46 games. The West is definitely going to be a tough conference, but I would imagine they're going to win 50 games, and that would be good enough for somewhere between, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. And once they get into postseason, then all bets are off with LeBron on the roster, obviously. Now, the other thing is, in my opinion, this roster is already, without Kawhi, this Lakers roster is already better than what he had in Cleveland. Now, I don't know if you guys are going to agree with that. You can let me know in chat. But in my opinion, this Lakers roster is already better than what he had in Cleveland. Obviously, Kevin Love is there. Kevin Love is a good player. And I'm talking about this past season's Cleveland roster. I mean, Brandon Ingram is a very good player. Lonzo Ball should improve. Julius Randle's kind of up in the air, but they've surrounded him with some good players. And I would think that this roster already, even without Kawhi, is better than what he had in Cleveland. Now, obviously, being in the West is a whole different animal, so they might not win as many games and things like that. But I would imagine this roster is better. Now, obviously, you can talk about injuries and you can talk about all kinds of things that could come into it, but it seems like for the most part, you guys agree that this Lakers roster is already better than what he had in Cleveland this past season. Now, like I said, I would expect the Lakers to continue to sign guys to one-year deals, and the Julius Randle situation is something that I will get into a little bit later that is really interesting to me as someone that could potentially get a long-term deal with the Lakers, but more than likely it's going to either be a one-year deal with the Lakers or a long-term deal with someone else. So obviously they signed JaVale, they signed Lance Stevenson and KCP yesterday, and we're kind of waiting to see whether it's going to be Lopez or IT and all those guys. And apparently they're also meeting with Tyreke Evans today. Now the Lance Stevenson thing is interesting to me, obviously for many reasons, but I think that he provides them pretty good value, can still defend pretty well. Questionable decision maker at times, but still can definitely do some things for them. JaVale on a one-year minimum was a bit shocking to me. Obviously, he played in very, very small spurts with the Warriors, but I would have expected more than a one-year minimum. Now, maybe he turned that down, turned other bigger deals down just to sign with the Lakers and just to be with Bron, but that seems like a pretty good deal to me as well. But I still think they need a starting caliber five-man. I don't think JaVale is going to be the starting five-man for the entire season playing 20, 25 minutes a game. That's just me. Yeah, Enter, you're absolutely right, dude. The West is an issue. You're talking about the Warriors and Rockets are still very good. Nuggets, Wolves, Jazz. The Nuggets could definitely be very good next year. The Timberwolves are always out there. The Mavs potentially trying to slide into the 8th spot. We'll talk a little bit about the conference imbalance a little bit later, but the West, like you said, is absolutely stacked for sure. So moving on just a little bit in some of the Lakers stuff, they are apparently meeting with Tyreke Evans today, and that is a really interesting guy to look at for all of these teams that are left, because as we move forward, we're going to talk a little bit later about some of the free agents that are left, but as we move forward, with all the cap space drying up, guys like Avery Bradley, guys like Tyreke Evans might end up looking at deals where, okay, you could sign with Chicago if they wanted you, or Philadelphia for 2 years, 20, okay? Or you could sign with LA for 1 year, 8. Obviously, there's less long-term security involved, but if you're playing on a better team, you're starting to get to the point where it's a marginal salary difference between a good team and a bad team. And with not a lot of cap space available, not a lot of options out there for these guys, you could start to see guys like Avery Bradley, guys like Tyreke Evans sign with teams like the Lakers, potentially the Rockets, potentially the Warriors, potentially the Celtics for cheaper mid-level exception, $5 to $8 million a year deals, because there just isn't enough cap space for there to be a ton of competition. And even the competition that is there is teams that aren't very good. I completely forgot about Portland. Portland was a 3 seed in the West last year. They're another team to keep an eye on as well. So the big thing, again, moving forward with the Lakers is I would expect more one-year deals. Things could change quickly, but it seems to me like they're slow playing this for 2019. So the guys that are still there, Isaiah Thomas, I think, is gone just by virtue of LeBron being there. I don't think that moving forward, it's going to be a good fit. I don't know where he's going to go, but I don't think he's going to be a Laker. Brook Lopez maybe on a one-year deal because they're pretty much out of the running for DeMarcus Cousins now in terms of the salary cap space that they have left. So maybe Brook Lopez is the 5-man. There's other 5 men out there. Nerlens Noel potentially, Alex Len potentially. But I would look for a one-year deal for a 5-man soon, whether it be Lopez or someone else. And then the Julius Randle thing is extremely, extremely interesting because he was a guy that was rumored to be worth potentially on an annual basis $18 to $20 million. I mean, very similar to what Aaron Gordon just got from the Magic. Now, obviously, his circumstances are very different now than they were at the beginning of free agency, with LeBron being there and any other potential moves being involved, and he might even be in a sign and trade with Kawhi if that's something the Lakers end up doing this season. But I would imagine that Julius Randle is not going to be a Laker, because basically the Lakers' pitch to him is going to be, hey, we can give you like a 1 year, $12 million deal or something like that. His qualifying offer is 1 year, 8. So I would imagine he's not going to accept that. So let's just say they say, okay, we'll give you a little bit of a raise. We'll go 1 year, 12, and then you can re-enter the market next year, but we want to make sure we keep our 2019 space. So his options are going to be 1 year, 12, or potentially a longer term deal with someone like the Nets or the Bulls or something like that. But with the way the Lakers are kind of doing this, that's pretty much their option. They can't offer Julius Randle a long-term deal because they need cap space to sign Kawhi if that's their plan to wait until 2019, which I think it is. So if you are a Lakers fan and you really, really want Julius Randle to come back, I'm aware that he could play the 5, but I'm just saying salary-wise, like, it's not that the Lakers don't want him back. They definitely want him back, but they don't want him back if it's going to take away their ability to sign Kawhi Leonard next summer, right? So they don't want it to be an issue long-term. So it's going to be a one-year deal, and if Julius Randle is not interested in that, then it might end up being a situation where the Nets or Bulls end up signing Julius Randle. So he's someone to definitely take a look at and potentially be moved from the Lakers. IT off the bench in Oklahoma City. I would look at Isaiah Thomas being another one of those guys that could end up signing late and could end up being, you know, a mid-level exception, $5 to $8 million a year guy, which if you watch the video on my channel is pretty crazy that he's gone from where he was second team All NBA and then everything that's happened to him to being a mid-level exception guy, basically back to where he was before he got to Boston. And how Boston affects players' value is a whole different conversation that I'm sure we'll talk about in the future. And I don't really understand some people are saying, you know, he's bad in the locker room. So from everything that I've read, I have never really seen anybody say anything bad about Isaiah Thomas as a locker room presence in Sacramento, in Phoenix, and in Boston, with the exception of some people didn't like the comment about him asking the Celtics to back up the Brinks truck, I believe was the comment. But the situation in Sacramento was tough, and I don't blame him for being unhappy there. Situation in Phoenix was tough. I don't blame him for being unhappy there, but it wasn't all this public stuff coming out about, you know, everything that he's saying and kind of, you know, being an issue in the locker room. That was only an issue, in my mind, till he got to Cleveland, okay? And that situation in Cleveland, you know, obviously the way it ended up with the great postseason run by LeBron, able to get them to the finals, things, you know, we're a lot happier by the end of it. But mid-season, things were not good in Cleveland. And I think, obviously, Isaiah Thomas, if some of the stuff he said publicly, he shouldn't have said while he was in Cleveland, and that's 100% on him. But I think you also have to consider that that situation in Cleveland had something to do with, you know, him being unhappy. Like, it was just not a very good situation to be in. So I don't know that we should necessarily isolate that situation and say Isaiah Thomas is going to be an issue in the locker room for someone moving forward. And maybe we should think a little bit more about how that situation in Cleveland affected him. Now, again, he has to be responsible for what he's saying publicly, but I wouldn't discount the situation in Cleveland and the impact that it had on his comments. Colin with the 199, I appreciate it, bud. Colin says, who else do you think the Pacers could add? So obviously Aaron Gordon was the big one, right? And they have plenty of money to spend. Julius Randle could potentially be a guy there, but I think they're probably in it a little bit more for a wing or a point guard because they already have Sabonis and they already have Miles Turner. So not a ton of point guards available, but Avery Bradley's a little bit small to play the wing. Tyreke Evans could potentially be a guy. I mean, they have plenty of space to spend, and they definitely want to improve, get guys that can shoot, potentially a point guard. So I would take a look. Let me see who's still available on my list here. Derek Favors is available, Zach LaVine, Tyreke Evans, Avery Bradley, Rondo, Wayne Ellington could be a guy, Rodney Hood, Dante Exum, Nerlens Noel, Michael Beasley, Seth Curry. There's a lot of guys still left, and we'll get to those later. Jabari Parker, potentially. So there's some restricted free agents they could go after. Obviously, they were rumored to be in on Aaron Gordon, but I would take a look at guys like Wayne Ellington can really shoot the ball. Rodney Hood potentially is a buy low guy. Dante Exum is a restricted free agent. Zach LaVine, some of those guys. Derek Favors maybe is a dark horse, but I would expect a guard or a wing for Indiana. So I would take a look at some of those guys. Yeah, Favors and Exum are expected to sign with the Jazz, but I don't. If Indiana started coming at those guys with some pretty big deals, then they might rethink that. Wayne Ellington is definitely an interesting guy. We'll get to that list a little bit later about some of the free agents that are still left. But Colin, again, I appreciate the 199, and those are some guys I would expect the Pacers to look at. Ellington would fit well in a lot of teams, can really shoot the ball well. Had a really good year for the Heat this past season. What's up, Tommy? How you doing, bud? Yeah, and the Heat obviously could re-sign Ellington, but they're already so far over the luxury tax. They're probably going to be looking to shed salary more than add it. Rodney Hood would be an interesting for the Pacers. Doug McDermott, they have already signed. That's a good point. I think that's an interesting fit. I believe the deal, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the deal for McDermott is 3 years, 22, which is interesting for a guy that, I mean, I didn't have on my radar as a big free agent target. Obviously can shoot the ball. Not a great defender, however. So 3 years, 22, again, if that's correct. Thank you, guys. Yeah, that is right. Is a little bit much for me for a guy like Doug McDermott, but again, he provides some of the things that Indiana needs shooting wise, and they can pair him with another guy like I mentioned, Avery Bradley, Exum, Ellington, another guy that can shoot. Then maybe that'll help them round out their roster a little bit more. People in chat trying to break news over here. I got my phone right here. If something happens, I'll have it. I'll have it for you guys. I don't think anybody's gonna be breaking news in chat. So another thing to talk about, we've mentioned a little bit on stream, but get a little bit more in depth on it today, is on the opening morning for me, the two bigger surprises, with the exception of Paul George officially committing to Oklahoma City, were Trevor Ariza and DeAndre Jordan signing one-year deals. And at the time, I was confused because those guys are entering that age where, you know, they're going to be signing their last couple of deals, their last big deal more than likely. And I expected them to look for long-term security, especially once DeAndre opted out of his deal with the Clippers, which was 1 year, 24. I thought personally, he's not going to get that high a value on the open market on a long-term deal, but he can at least get more long-term security. But on the other hand, apparently they wanted to sign big one-year deals. DeAndre, I believe, is a 1 year 24. Ariza is a 1 year 15, and the Suns used all their cap space on Trevor Ariza. Lord knows why, but we'll get to that later. And so apparently, the biggest reasoning I can come up with for why these guys are signing one-year deals this summer is that we're kind of entering this new cycle in NBA free agency. So if you think about it, why is there not as much cap space around the league this summer? Why do teams not have space to sign guys to big contracts like they have in the past? So obviously 2016, the cap space skyrocketed, new TV deal, all that stuff. Allowed Kevin Durant to come to Golden State, all that. But the cap is going to continue to rise the next couple of years, gradually, but it's going to continue to rise. And those 2016 deals, whether they're 3-year deals, 4-year deals, are going to start coming off the books in 2019 or 2020. So if I'm DeAndre Jordan or I'm Trevor Ariza, my mindset apparently is going to be that I'm going to take a gamble that for this 1 year, I'm going to make a lot of money, and then I'm going to be healthy, continue to play well, and then I'm going to cash in 2019, 2020 when all of the cap space is available, right? When all this cap space frees up. And this could be the new cycle in the NBA. We could get to the point where every 2 years guys sign big deals, and the next 2 years they're signing 1 year deals to get back to when cap space opens up. And I wouldn't be surprised if that becomes the new cycle because of that jump in salary in 2016. Everybody had space to sign these big deals. Values changed on guys that normally wouldn't be worth as much as the contracts that they did end up signing. And every 2 years that could end up happening where salary drops off. We end up signing guys to big deals. 2 years later, everybody's signing 1 year deals to get back to when cap space opens up. And then we do it all again. So I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up, don't forget kids, play healthy. I wouldn't be surprised if that continues to be the cycle, because the salary cap is related to how much revenue the league is bringing in, and obviously the new TV deal gave them a lot more money, so then increased the cap, and then everybody had more space to sign bigger deals. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of the new norm that we're entering into, this new cycle. Don't forget, kids, play healthy. LOL, we're going to get to predictions at the end. The topics that we're going through are in the description. I'm going to get to some predictions near the end. Small market teams are going to suffer from the salary cap. I mean, Potentially they could. But, I mean, you're looking at teams like Milwaukee spending a ton of money. You're looking at teams like Toronto spending a ton of money. I don't know that this whole small market thing is going to be a huge issue moving forward, except for teams like maybe Portland, who are desperately trying to stay under the luxury tax. Okay, so Nicholas, making sure I'm aware, what team has the best chance to land DeMarcus Cousins? Lakers, Wizards, Pelicans, or some other team? So that's actually something we're getting to now. Is there's actually it kind of seems like, okay, we're taking a deep breath from free agency. A lot of the big stuff happened, but in reality, there's still a lot of guys out there: DeMarcus Cousins, Derek Favors, Jabari Parker, Yusuf Nurkic, Zach LaVine, Tyreek Evans, Avery Bradley, Rajon Rondo, Wayne Ellington, Rodney Hood, Dante Exum, Nerlens Noel, Michael Beasley. Like, there's still a lot of Seth Curry. There's still a lot of guys out there. And with Boogie specifically, basically the whole offseason, to me, it narrowed it down to 3 teams: the Lakers, the Mavs, and the Pelicans. The Mavs have DeAndre Jordan. The Lakers look to be prioritizing for next summer. So I expect Boogie to re-sign with New Orleans. I don't think it's really any question anymore. The Wizards are still kind of a dark horse for a sign and trade, but I would expect him to end up back in New Orleans on a 2 or 3 year potentially max deal, probably more closer to like a $25-26 million deal, 2 or 3 years, something like that. I would expect him to end up going back to New Orleans as opposed to the Lakers, or obviously the Mavericks were in play before DeAndre Jordan was signed. And so some other guys, like I talked about, Derek Favors, you guys are talking about potentially going back to Utah. I would imagine that would probably be the case because, again, the market's kind of dried up a little bit in terms of teams that have a ton of cap space. So I would imagine Derek Favors is going to end up back in Utah, but he is still out there unrestricted. Jabari Parker, I haven't heard a ton about, and as we talked about, the Bucks ended up signing Ersan Ilyasova, so potentially that could be kind of their insurance policy against Jabari Parker leaving. So he might not end up being moved anywhere, or he could end up obviously signing a deal in restricted free agency, and the Bucks could end up matching it. But I don't know if you guys have. I haven't heard a ton about Jabari Parker, potential landing spots, and things like that. Other guys, like I said, Yusuf Nurkic, the Blazers have been signing guys, but I don't know that really Nurkic is high on their priority list because, again, they want to stay as far under the luxury tax as possible. Nerlens Noel is a very, very interesting guy for me moving forward, for teams like Washington, for teams like LA, because you got to understand, like, obviously things did not go well in Dallas. Like, he bet on himself, and we're going to talk about Seth Curry in a second. But so obviously Nerlens Noel bet on himself. He turned down a 4-year, $70 million offer, signed a qualifying offer, and then basically got benched the entire season for a variety of different reasons. But when he was in Philadelphia, he was one of the more active big men in the league, one of the better defensive big men in the league, obviously very athletic, can finish around the rim, and I think he could definitely be a big value guy. Now, I don't expect him to sign a long-term deal. I expect him to sign a 1-year deal with somebody and try and capitalize next season, because I expect him to have a very good year next year if healthy, whether it be with LA, whether it be with Washington, whether it be with the Nets, the Bulls, any of those teams. I would expect another 1-year deal from him. Did he really just sign? A lot of you guys are saying that he just signed. OKC? I haven't seen it yet. Hold on, I'm looking right now. Like, I haven't gotten the tweet or anything. Are you guys messing with me? A lot of you guys are saying it, so I don't think you're messing with me. Let me look. That's funny, as I'm talking about him. Oklahoma City. Yep, I just see it. Yep, there it is. Interesting. So as we're talking about Nerlens Noel, 1-1 to Oklahoma City. I don't have Sham's notifications on, but I probably should. Sham bomb, my fault. I apologize. Wow. Okay, a 1-1. Does anybody have contract details? Anybody know how much it is? Really interesting. Really, really interesting move. Want to know how much it is? I would imagine like a 5 or 6 million, maybe, something like that. That's a nice move. It's got to be an MLE. Player option second season. No idea how much yet. Okay, that's fine. Well, I'm sure we'll find out. It's got to be mid-level. It's got to be between 6 and 8. Although no, it can't be. Because the Thunder are a tax team. It's got to be like 5. It's got to be like a 2-year, $10 million 1-and-1 deal. 7. How is it possible for it to be 7? Because okay, that's what everybody's saying, but that doesn't make any sense because they're a tax team. They don't have that much, unless I'm wrong. They don't have. They have like a 5.84 mid-level because they're a tax team. Anyway, that's an interesting fit as a backup to Steven Adams. I would have expected him to look for a team in which he would have been a starting option, but for Oklahoma City, that's a really, really interesting move and someone that I didn't expect them to sign. I didn't expect them to be in on, but that could be a really, really big boost for them. Again, a backup 5-man, because at times Jeremy Grant was playing the backup 5 and he was doing a good job, but wow, I mean, he's not going to help them space the floor any, which is something they definitely need help with Russ. So that's not going to help them space the floor much, but that's definitely a high upside guy, similar to the Knicks signing Hazanya. That's a really, really, really interesting move. Either 7 total or the second year. Interesting. Okay, I'll look. It's got this coming season has got to be 5 though, max. It's got to be like 5.84 max because that's the taxpayer mid-level. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I expected him to sign for, like a 1-year 5, a 2-year 10, because of these really good teams that, only have the mid-level left. I didn't really anticipate Oklahoma City, though, again, because Steven Adams is there. I expected Washington, potentially, LA, potentially, but I did not expect... Wow, I did not expect Oklahoma City. That's really, really interesting. Really interesting. I'm going to look and see if we can get any more details on it from our guy Sham. Let me see. Yeah, I mean, that's good for both sides. So obviously Noel gets the chance to hopefully play and play well and boost his value moving forward, because he is still a young player. I believe he's 24. He is still a young player, has some room to grow and has some room to improve, obviously, and this gives him an opportunity to showcase what he can do in Oklahoma City, and obviously helps the Thunder. Again, the problem is it just doesn't help them a ton with spacing. Jeremy Grant's not a floor spacer. Steven Adams obviously isn't. I wouldn't expect Nerlens Noel to either. So I would have expected them to be a little bit more in on maybe a 4-man that can shoot the ball, but that's a very interesting move. All right, we'll come back to that later once we find out. Okay, and apparently Derek Favors is going back to the Jazz as we're on stream here. I just saw the same thing, and I'll be interested to see what Derek Favors signs for. I just saw that. So other guys to talk about. So we'll get back to Noel. We'll get back to Favors once we kind of know a little bit more about their deals. But other guys to talk about. Zach LaVine. I don't know if we have any Bulls fans in chat, but Zach LaVine is going to continue to be an interesting one for me. And I would imagine he is probably either going to end up with the Nets or the Bulls, because I don't know a ton of other teams that have the cap space to sign him to a deal that would prevent the Bulls from re-signing him, with the exception of the Nets. So I would definitely think that LaVine may be coming back on like a 15-a-year deal, something like that. I mean, he is still a valuable player. I just don't think the Bulls really wanted to pay like 20 plus for him. No, Turbo, I haven't talked about a Kevin Love trade yet, but I will later. We're going to get to it later. So Zach LaVine is definitely an interesting guy to keep an eye on. If we have any Bulls fans in the chat, I would think that he's going to end up playing for them next season on somewhere maybe like a 2-year 30, a 3-year 45 deal, something like that. Something that allows him to prove himself and get back into the market pretty soon. 2-year deal. Let me see. Yeah, it just says 2-year deal. Okay. Again, we'll get back to those guys once we know a little bit more about their contract details. We talked a little bit about Tyreke Evans and Avery Bradley. We talked about Wayne Ellington, Rodney Hood, Dante Exum. It seems like probably will be back with the Jazz. But what about our guys? What about our guys, Michael Beasley and Seth Curry, fan favorites? I wouldn't, with the cast of characters the Lakers are putting together, would anybody be shocked if Michael Beasley joins Bron and Lance and JaVale in LA? I would not be shocked. Seth Curry, again, is an interesting guy to take a look at for sure. Diop says, Tucker, what would you do what would you do to Billy King if you see him on the street? I would say hello, and I would shake his hand and probably take a picture and thank him for no longer being the GM of the New Jersey Nets. That would pretty much be it. I think Beasley is going to find a deal somewhere. I don't think he's going to end up in China, but he's going to play for someone. But again, I wouldn't be shocked with this cast of characters the Lakers are putting together. Would not be shocked if he ends up in LA. Seth Curry, I've heard a lot of the Warriors chatter, but with guys like that, it's tough to kind of get a concrete report on where they could end up going because there's just not a ton of public interest in that. Obviously, there's a little bit more public interest in Seth Curry because of his last name. Maybe the Warriors, but the Warriors need they need two-way wings. They don't need guys that can. They already have Quinn Cook. If you're looking at a guy that's shorter, pretty good shooter, pretty good ball handler, it's a little bit redundant to bring in Seth Curry. So I mean, maybe they will do that, but I would imagine they're going to be in it a little bit more for wings if they can try and get them. So someone's asking about Trevor Ariza, which we talked about a little bit earlier, but we'll talk about the Suns. So the Phoenix Suns have done this before. They've tried to clear cap space before to sign players. If you remember, LaMarcus Aldridge, before he signed with the Spurs, ended up meeting with the Suns and almost signed with them, and they made some moves to try and clear some space for him. And I'm a little bit surprised. I guess you could make an argument that Trevor Ariza is going to be able to mentor some of these young wings, TJ Warren, Josh Jackson, Bridges, guys like that. But you're spending all of your cap space this summer that you let go of Tyler Ulis and apparently upset Devin Booker in the process. So you made moves to try and create some cap space, and you ended up with a 1-year, $15 million deal for Trevor Ariza. Now, obviously, the positive side of that is that it doesn't affect your cap space in future summers, but why would you not go for a guy that fits the timeline a little bit more? I mean, are you trying to somehow make the playoffs in probably the most competitive Western Conference ever? If that's your plan, then I question it because I don't think this roster is good enough to make the playoffs next year. I think they still need to continue to grow. So if it's not a mentoring plan, then I'm certainly questioning that being the Suns' big free agent signing. Excuse me. $36 million for Favors for 2 years. Is that right? That's a lot, y'all. I mean, I like the fact that it's shorter, right? That it's not like a super long-term deal, but $18 million for Derek Favors, who, even though he starts for Utah, is essentially a backup five man because him and Gobert start together. They don't play together, obviously, the entire game. And Derek Favors comes off the floor and then ends up playing essentially the backup five for Utah. And that is a lot of money. That's a lot of money for Derek Favors. And I'm curious who they're bidding against. Who else is going to pay Derek Favors $18 million a year? That is, in my opinion, that's a lot of money. Again, for a guy that essentially plays about 10 minutes a game as a starting four and about 20 minutes a game as the backup five. So that is an interesting one for me. So now moving on a little bit, this has been a conversation that has been going around Twitter a little bit with LeBron going west and with LeBron now going to Los Angeles. If you think about all of the players that are now in the West, Kawhi, obviously, if he's healthy, Anthony Davis, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and now LeBron, who is now the best player in the Eastern Conference? Now, in my opinion, obviously, it depends on health and everything like that. I would say Giannis right now, but you've got Embiid if he's healthy. You've got Kyrie if he's healthy. And with that consideration, like we talked about yesterday, how far down you have to go before getting to the best player in the East. But when you're talking about the best players in the league, how far down the list do you have to get before you get to a player in the Eastern Conference? I mean, there's the five guys I mentioned, if healthy: Kawhi, Bron, Steph, AD, and KD. And then the league's MVP this past season, James Harden. And then maybe you get to Giannis or someone like that. I would love to see you guys' opinion in chat, who you think is the best player in the East now, whether it be Embiid or Giannis or Kyrie, or whoever you think it is. But with that, is it time for the league to consider potentially getting rid of conferences. And obviously, it's not as simple as just saying we're not going to have conferences anymore. There are other considerations in terms of travel and in terms of scheduling and making sure that teams are playing equally. But is it time to consider a 1 through 16 playoff format, regardless of conference, and just take the 16 best records in the league? Hoop Reference, I appreciate you being in chat, man. Thank you. He says Giannis right behind, with Embiid right behind him. Most people saying Giannis. Someone said Tatum. Someone said Darko. Y'all are killing me. Y'all are killing me. Yeah, so it's between those three. I would say Giannis, but I would say that it is probably time for the league to go through a 1 through 16 playoff format. I mean, the East was already weak. The West was already ridiculously strong. And the only reason the Warriors didn't win 4 consecutive NBA championships and the West didn't win 4 consecutive was because, well, I guess they would have won 5 consecutive. But the only reason was because of LeBron and Kyrie and Kevin Love. And now all those guys but one are off of that team. And I think it is probably time. I mean, like we said, you have to make sure that everybody's playing an equal schedule. You can't just keep the same schedule where teams are playing all the good Western Conference teams and not as many good Eastern Conference, or not as many Eastern Conference teams, and the records are going to be all messed up. But I would like to see the league go to a 1 through 16 playoff format, adjust the schedule to where everybody plays an equal amount of games against each team. Obviously, there would be some travel issues involved, but I would 100% appreciate if the league would go to that 1 through 16 playoff format. Yeah, someone said they're from overseas. They don't understand the system. It's definitely strange. If you really look at it, it's definitely strange to just, obviously there's logic involved in it, but for the most part, arbitrarily split the league in half and have teams that don't have as good a record make the playoffs over teams that have a better record. I mean, how many teams in the West won 50 games last year, and how many teams under 50 games made the playoffs in the East last year? So I don't know what you guys think. That would definitely be something I would like to see moving forward. And so a lot of people asking about predictions, and that's kind of the next thing that we're going to talk about. I already discussed, I think DeMarcus Cousins is going to go back to New Orleans. I think there's going to be a lot more one-year deals because players are going to try and prioritize getting back in the market in 2019 and 2020 when there's more cap space available. And then in terms of Avery Bradley and Tyreke Evans and guys like that, what I would expect is for them to end up signing like $8.5 million deals over 2 or 3 years, maybe 1 or 2 years, with teams that are non-tax paying teams but are still going to be good and they have that money to spend. Teams like the Lakers, teams like potentially the Rockets, depending on what they do with Clint Capella. I would expect them to start to sign deals that are slightly cheaper with those better teams because the cap space is drying up. There's not as much space available. And the later we get, the cheaper those guys are going to end up being. So for Avery Bradley, I wouldn't be shocked if it's either of the LA teams, whether the Clippers bring him back or the Lakers want to sign him, potentially Philadelphia. Same thing with Tyreke Evans. And obviously Tyreke is meeting with the Lakers today. So I would say, if I had to take a guess, I would say Avery Bradley probably to either Philly or LA on a 1-year deal, potentially 2 to LA. That would be my prediction, but it's so tough because I haven't really seen it much about him. Can you make a prediction about Kevin Love's future? Thank you, Nicholas, for reminding me. There are those reports about Kevin Love potentially being traded, and I don't think that he's going to. I think the Cavs are going to try and make the playoffs next year. They're going to try and run it back, feature Kevin Love, try and bring in a few guys, and try and make the playoffs next year. That's just me. That would be my prediction, that he's not going to get traded. If he was going to get traded, there were rumors of maybe the Suns potentially being in on him. I mean, who wants? I don't want to make it sound like Kevin Love's not a good player, but who wants Kevin Love on the deal he's on and with some of the injury issues that he's had? I know there's reports they're open to moving him. I don't think he's going to be moved, personally. So moving on, we've got our last couple of sections here. I know it says we've only been live for 50 minutes. It's more like an hour and 15 because obviously it messed up earlier. So what are you guys most excited about moving forward now that LeBron is in the West? now that we kind of know some of the bigger chips in free agency, what are you guys looking forward to, whether it be next year, the rest of the offseason, potential trades that could go down? What are you guys looking forward to moving forward, looking for in terms of things that excite you about the NBA? Money Mac, I'm not sure. I've never used Super Chat myself. I don't know if it does or does not work on mobile. I'm not sure. Kawhi Leonard is definitely still going to be an interesting one, although I'd imagine that's going to calm down a little bit. Summer League, I'm definitely very excited about Summer League. The return of Wiggins to the Cavs potentially, and a trade for Love. A Dennis Schroeder trade. Melo getting traded away. I don't know what's going to happen with Melo. There's been talks of a buyout. There's been talks of a potential trade. I don't know who's trading for him, and keep in mind he still has a no trade clause, so I don't know how all that's going to work. You got to find a team he actually wants to go to, so I don't know what's going to happen with Melo. Nets getting their own pick. Yes, there we go. Crawford is meeting with the Sixers. Interesting. Knicks being a playoff team? I doubt it, honestly. I mean, I'm glad you're excited about that, but I doubt that's going to end up happening, in my opinion. Excited for the Lakers versus either the Warriors or Rockets to get to the conference finals. That's going to be a dogfight. That's true. I mean, if those end up being the top 3 seeds, 2 of those teams are going to have to play each other to end up getting to the conference finals. Rex, I appreciate the love for 24K. Thank you, bud. Nets trading their own pick for Dirk. Yeah, Melo just doesn't have value anymore. You're right. I'm definitely still interested to see, though, what happens with the Knicks, because there's been talks that maybe Porzingis might not even be healthy enough to play next year. So I don't know what's going to end up going down there. I did see that. Dominique says, what do you think about LeBron forcing the Cavs to trade for Clarkson so LA can get rid of his contract so LeBron could come to a cap space? I did see that. That's an interesting roundabout way of thinking about it, because of obviously LeBron ended up signing in LA, and I just completely forgot that they had that midseason trade. Weird seeing LeBron versus the West before June. That's true. That's true. Very true. All right, guys, so we're gonna wrap it up with a little bit of Q&A stuff. So you guys have any questions for me, anything about the league, anything about the channel, we're gonna wrap it up with a little bit of a Q&A, and then we're gonna wrap it up. It'll be, again, about an hour on this stream, and then obviously it was messing up earlier, so a little over an hour today. But anything else you got for me, hit me with it, and then we'll wrap it up from there. Do I think Cleveland should have shopped LeBron instead of Kyrie? I don't necessarily think. So I think Kyrie's decision to want to leave Cleveland and ask for a trade definitely had things to do with LeBron and playing with LeBron. But I think the situation in Cleveland and Cleveland itself was definitely part of his reasoning for wanting to leave as well. So I don't think it was necessarily a situation where they should have picked between one of those two guys. But personally, you always pick LeBron in that scenario. Obviously, in hindsight, now that he's gone, you could say, oh, well, at least they would have had Kyrie still. You didn't know that. And from a lot of things that I've read, for the longest time, LeBron wanted to stay in Cleveland. He wanted to finish his career there. And then recently, the Lakers just looked like a more enticing option. So, no, I don't think that they should have picked Kyrie over LeBron. And someone pointed out he had a no-trade clause anyway. It's another thing. Someone brought up Dan Gilbert's statement yesterday about LeBron leaving, and I thought that was really well said. I was really interested to see what his reaction was going to be to the whole situation, because obviously of how it went last time, but I thought it was really well written, very well said on his part, and just being very thankful to LeBron for bringing Cleveland a championship that it didn't really seem like anybody else was going to be able to bring them. And that's, when we look back on LeBron's career, could potentially be his crowning achievement as an NBA player. Obviously, making 8 consecutive finals and potentially extending that streak this coming season is going to be a big deal. But bringing that championship to Cleveland, it cannot be understated. One, how much that means to the franchise, how much that means to the city, and how much that affects his legacy. And for Dan Gilbert to so openly admit his appreciation for that, I thought was very well done on his part, and something I was glad to see. Do I play NBA 2K or 2K Live? I play 2K, but not a ton of 2K18 this year. I used to crush it with 2K, and I played a ton of 2K17, but the game this year just did not appeal to me as much. When he says, where do you get the creativity for your videos from? In a month or so, I want to make a channel similar to yours, but I fear a lack of creativity. For me, I've had a lot of people comment that you know, for the most part, I make some fairly unique videos, and the topics are fairly unique. And I would just say, surround yourself with as much NBA stuff as possible, because that's where you're going to get ideas from. Not necessarily watching a ton of NBA YouTubers, because you don't want to end up copying their content, obviously, but whether it be podcasts or articles or Twitter, ideas can come from anywhere. And just keep a notepad around, keep a note on your phone, just continue to jot stuff down about things you want to talk about. Like, more than anything, make sure it's a topic that people want to hear about, but make sure it's something that you want to talk about as well, because that's going to come through in the video if you're not passionate about it, if you're not genuine about your interest in the topic. So that's what I would say. That would be my advice, is to just surround yourself with as much NBA stuff as possible. Again, not necessarily other NBA YouTubers, but just content in general, and just continue to take notes and try and find what interests you and just talk about that. What do I think Jabari Parker signs? Jabari Parker comes up in like every single stream, and I'm just really not sure what the move is going to be for him, because the Ilyasova thing kind of makes me think that's an insurance policy against him potentially leaving. But as we continue to talk about, the cap space is drying up. So unless it's the Bulls or the Nets making a play for him, I don't know where he's going to end up. And if it is one of those two teams, I wouldn't imagine it being anything over 18, 19, 20 million a year. And I would think that the Bucks might end up matching that. So those would be the three teams, the Bucks, the Nets, and the Bulls. But I would imagine he's going to be back with the Bucks. Interesting. I actually didn't see that until just now. Someone mentioned that the Timberwolves withdrew Bjelica's qualifying offer, and he's actually someone that I talked about, potentially teams like the Jazz, the Nuggets, guys like that need someone that can really shoot the ball, maybe even Indiana. And he originally had a qualifying offer. Now he's an unrestricted free agent, and I'm unsure why the Timberwolves did that. Potentially could be, I don't know, their cap situation, their luxury tax situation off the top of my head. But that's an interesting move, and someone that teams definitely should be looking at as a guy that's pretty big, and he's just going to be able to shoot the ball for you, but that's an extremely valuable quality to have. So I wouldn't be shocked to see him be signed pretty quickly. Who's my MVP favorite next year? Or is MVP favorite and sleeper? I'm going to go favorite. I'm going to say probably Giannis, depending on the shooters that they surround him with. He started off the year crazy good. And I think that it's going to be a similar situation to where Russ averaged a triple-double to win his MVP. He averaged a triple-double again. He wasn't even in the conversation for MVP. And it's going to be the same thing with those kind of guys, where the people are going to want to give it to somewhere else. So James Harden is still going to have a great year. LeBron is still going to have a great year. But they're going to want to give it to someone else. So my favorite would be Giannis. My sleeper would be someone in Philadelphia. Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, depending on who they surround those guys with, they're going to have to do a lot. And statistically, they could end up putting up monstrous numbers. So favorite would be Giannis. Sleeper would be one of those two guys in Philly. More likely Embiid, though. AD is a good one as well. I haven't really seen anything about Jamal Crawford. He's someone that has been rumored to be maybe with the Warriors, anything like that. I haven't seen anything else, though. I mean, I think his value is kind of, you know, his reputation is kind of outpacing his value at this point, and he's not as valuable maybe as people might think. I mean, high volume shooter, not a high percentage guy, not going to defend very well for you. Obviously, he can score the ball, but he's going to have to go to the right situation to really provide a ton of value. We'll go one more. Anthony Tolliver, big news of the day. Anthony Tolliver now a Timberwolf. Yeah, Cordy, we'll end with that. Rookie of the year favorite. I don't know. I want to say Luka, but I think it'll be a little bit more of a transition for him at first. than some other guys. So it's kind of a cop-out answer, but probably Ayton. Probably going to put up some big numbers. I would probably say DeAndre Ayton. Would I ever make a gaming channel? I've considered it. It's so much work to do this and then to add another channel to it. I just don't know that I'd have the time, and I would want to make sure that I have the time to put everything into it. I do have a Twitch. It's not up on screen now, but it is on screen in my videos, and I do try and stream. Doc was asking me if a Twitch stream is going to be coming soon, potentially. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, then I would definitely, check me out on Twitch at twitch.tv/sportinglogically with an underscore in between. But no, as a gaming channel on YouTube, I just don't have the time. I would love to, but no, I don't have the time, honestly. But that's where we're going to wrap it up today, guys. I appreciate everybody being in here, up over 150 viewers for most of the stream. I really appreciate it. Everybody that's here, the donos, again, Colin, Enter, I appreciate the donos. Thank you, guys. I'm going to try and do this as consistently as I can in terms of the live stream stuff. I am planning a video coming out tomorrow about some of the 1 through 16 playoff seeding stuff, whether the league should get rid of conferences. Should be out sometime in the afternoon my time tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. I really, really appreciate you guys coming out. We're definitely on the road to 25K. I apologize about the audio kind of being weird in the beginning and you guys kind of sticking with me through that. But again, I appreciate the support, all the love. Sometime in the afternoon tomorrow will be a video. Probably not a stream tomorrow because when I stream and put a video out on the same day, YouTube gets kind of weird and the video doesn't do as well because I'm streaming and it counts as another video, and it can just be a little bit weird. So probably no stream tomorrow. Video tomorrow though, and then Wednesday will probably be an off day because it's 4th of July, and we'll be back either with a stream or a video on Thursday. So again, guys, thank you so much for the love. Thank you guys for being here wherever you're watching from. I really appreciate it, and I'll see all you guys next.